Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org, now being rebranded businessabc.net. Once again, we keep profiling the global visionaries and personalities that are changing the world, the technology, and the way we deal with each other, and especially the way we create business, jobs, and technology. And technology being probably the common denominator of our society, and as well probably in one end, the tools that we use today for everything we do, for good and for bad. And of course, in this channel, we always profile people that are pushing the boundaries, pushing what it means to be a business and what it means to deal with technology, and especially with our communities that we have both virtual, but as well face-to-face around the world. So today I'm welcome to our series a personality that, as I would say that you cannot put it in a box because there's a lot of different complexities and layers, but as well a fantastic entrepreneur and the force of nature. So I welcome to the series Jay Steinback. And Jay is a force of nature, as I was saying, that has over 25 years of background in corporate ecosystems through technology, collaboration, and team structures. He is the co-founder, CEO, and chairman of yWhales, a platform focused on developing solutions in enterprise blockchain space, as well as creating B2B and B2E metaverse operating systems through the yWhales labs. yWhales and the ecosystem is one of the largest and exclusive global leadership community aimed at shaping the business of Web3. yWhales is working on building a strong foundation to support ventures and is consistently dedicated to educating and collaborating with communities to advance the adoption of Web3 technologies. Jay also serves as the Co-Managing Director of FinRamp, a platform that aims to revolutionize the carbon credit issuance process by providing a regulatory compliant, secure, and transparent carbon credit as a digital security solution. Before his venture with yWhales, Jay orchestrated the success sale of his family's retail empire to private equity in 2019. And along with his wife, Amanda, he founded the View Enterprises, another corporate ecosystem rooted in the residential and commercial real estate market. And Jay also played the foundational role as one of the founding board members of Arch Grants, where he was responsible for constructing the competition's selection and due diligence process. He's also the board member of Lou Fuz Sports Club. And Jay, as a last part of all this deep experience, is also associated with Business and Entrepreneur Network, including AO Entrepreneurs Organization and YPO, Young President Organizations and Entrepreneurs Organization. And alumnus of the University of Rhode Island, he was recognized in 40 under 40 list by St. Louis Business Journal. Well, a lot more, but this is a summary. Welcome to the series, Jay.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing intro, and I'm suddenly going, my God, how much stuff have I done in the past few years?
Yeah, that's
it doesn't seem like that much until you're rattling off, and I go, no, it's okay. But no, thank you so much for having me. It was fabulous sharing a stage with you back in Transform Base in London, and just glad we have some time now, not rushed, to be able to kind of finish our conversations.
No, fantastic. And really, I'm very excited because you are a man of multiple tools, but as well a man of putting people together, and your energy is amazing. So Jay, let's start by the basis. So with 25 years of background and of course your family business, how did you start this journey? A bit of your background in terms of education, family and technology and education as well, but as well the first, the inception of all of this.
Yeah, so it kind of I'm the product of early Web 1. So my first computer I built, my first modem I had to go and get the parts and assemble, and so really spent that time in Web 1, kind of like seeing that infrastructure rise of like, okay, I can do this, but what do I do with it? How do the first time I went to the library's website, it was dialing the modem that only one person could be on at a time for the St. Louis, library. So that was how early I kind of got invested and integrated in technology. And as I kind of grew up into the family business, you have access to everything. And I really understood how, ERPs work, CRMs. I took my family's business, from there was a fax machine on every desk to, internet, e-commerce, and that entire, transitioning people of having to teach people, here's how you use a mouse. Here's how you use email. Spent the time in that business. At age 30, I took over as CEO. Spent the next few years, and at age 35, I bought out my entire family. And then, as you said, I turned around 2 years later, sold it off to private equity. That was a fabulous journey, and had been kind of involved this entire time in a little bit of Bitcoin, and keeping an eye on Ethereum and other things. And it was very interesting from the concepts of how I used to view these Oracle systems and these archaic databases of lost data. Like, it's all there, no one's using it, no one has access to it. And so kind of watching this concept of like an internet computer was very interesting, just from how I knew businesses operated and the needs that they had. But as you kind of went through the ICO craze and all this other stuff, I just go, it's cute, but this isn't a really good use for the technology. Obviously I sold my company, started a whole bunch of other ones in the real estate space with my wife. And then 2020 hit, and the world kind of changed, and I took a step back and said, okay, we're seeing the rise of cryptocurrencies yet again. I don't think that they make much sense. I understand the technology behind them, but all the YouTubers and all the people that are talking about them, they're just talking about it wrong. So I reached out into my kind of networks, and asked a few questions. How can I get more educated in blockchain and cryptocurrencies? I got from the YPO, I had over 250 emails within 24 hours of other people saying, if you can figure it out, let us know too. And so what I found is there's a niche that exists of high-level C-suite executives that believe in the blockchain-based technologies around this, but have to have regulated controls and access in the same way that their traditional systems do if they're going to think about using this. So a Zoom with one person turned into a Zoom with 5 people, which turned into a Zoom with 15 people, and next thing we know, we had 150 people every week logging into Zoom, and we heard from founders, we heard from entrepreneurs, over and over. And so I really found that Web3 at the very core is all about community. It's all about who you speak with. It's about who you interact with, and it's about who you're collaborating with. And so we grew to over 1,300 all verified C-suite executives. You can be anonymous a lot of places on the internet, but not with us. Everyone knows my home address, my kids' names, my wife's name, and vice versa. I have that same level of data on them. And that creates a very different, thought of trust. And I think that when we're talking about, in Web3, this trustless world, you got to be able to trust what someone's saying. And so someone that may have a lot of theses and opinions on blockchain, cryptocurrencies, or Bitcoin is very different than someone that actually is working full time in it, and has a very institutional approach of understanding the rules, regulations, and all the laws around like what it is to do this legally. Because a startup, if you're a young entrepreneur and you start up in a emerging part of the world, your restrictions and your kind of guardrails are going to be much less than someone who in the United States has an existing business, or really anywhere in the world, and they have to follow those rules and guidelines. So really my journey in a nutshell was just around the regulation, and a little less of kind of the nuance of the technologies, but more how do you integrate the technologies into the regulations.
So one of the things that, as you mentioned, that you were always fantastic, I think, in all your career, was putting people together. And that's actually, for instance, is one of the most difficult things, probably the most difficult thing, including for me, because you are a natural social person, but most of the people, for instance, I'm more a geek person that like to be researching and doing my stuff, but other people that are like community managers. So how do you see that process from building communities from the beginning of your career, from offline to online, and then scaling this, like you said, from the Web 1 to Web 3?
Yeah. So, today I have 2 very different kind of branches of companies. I have my real estate arm, and that's the building I'm sitting in here today. And there's 50 real estate agents and mortgage and title professionals, all physically in a space with their offices running there. On the Web3, we're all decentralized. So, we meet over Zoom, we work over, we work electronically with variety of tools. And then we get together a couple times a year just to kind of do strategic planning and everything else. So I would say it can go really 2 ways. I don't think there's any substitute to being in the same room together. I will say that there's, without a doubt, doesn't matter how effective anyone thinks they are, you're always going to be most effective in the same space, in the same room, for extended periods of time. How do you find people to believe in you? How do you find people to kind of grab on here? And my situation is very unique, I think, in a certain sense, because I set out and said, look, I only want people that have kind of their 10,000 hours in their areas of expertise. I very much believe in the Malcolm Gladwell theory that, you're not an expert until you've kind of have eclipsed that 10,000 hours, because it's not just the successes, it's also the failures. And so one of the greatest things is I just started speaking. And that's exactly what I did every single day. We were talking internally on our Discord servers, twice a week, we were hosting private Zooms, and then started doing the public podcast and everything else. And what I found is that, the more that somebody would show up, if they kind of showed up more than, three weeks in a row, kind of consistently to everything, there's a reason that they're there. And so you start changing the conversation from me talking to listening to what they're interested in. And a lot of times you can find that people have inherent interests, but they're shyer. They don't want to be the face of something, but they want to be involved in something that changes the world. And so sometimes just listening to someone's, goals and visions, and in the same sense of where they came from and what they've done, allows you to build, really high functioning teams. Even if they don't have experience in the exact asset class that you're in today. So I talk a lot. I travel a lot. We have, yWhales at its peak, I think had about 13 employees. We've scaled back a little bit with the bear market. 13 employees, upwards of 40 advisors, and then 1,300 community members. So we give our advisors, we reward with equity, in yWhales enterprises. So I don't know where they're going to spend their time, whether that's going to be LaunchXR, our immersive commerce play, FinRamp, communities, or our venture capital arm. But we kind of find people that have a lot of have a little bit more time on their hands, and they may have exited. They may just want to be more involved. We sign legal documents, we reward them with equity, and then we do 6-month engagements. And I think that's another really important thing is that, you don't always have to get married. You can date. And so finding really smart people that want to kind of dip their toe in and, play around will turn into longer term engagements. It doesn't have to be, straight to employment. And so that's what we did is we engaged people as advisors, and those that continually spent more time with us. When we went to re-sign at that 6-month mark, either they stayed at the same level, they dropped out, or they got much more involved.
It's amazing, and that shows as well the expertise. And I think this is one thing that probably you guys in the US are much more dynamic than us in Europe, because in Europe everyone thinks they can work for life and they work 9 to 5 and everything will happen. But that's a bigger discussion. So in terms of from you mentioned your family business to creating View and to create yWhales. Tell us a bit how did it go to create the special View and the yWhales, but as well passing from this family to go to create your own ventures.
So I'll start with the transition from family business to View. So View Enterprises is we have residential, commercial, real estate brokerage. We have a mortgage company, and we have a title company. So I always very much believe in ecosystems. That's something that my grandfather instilled in me is you can't just have one bucket. That's really hard to do. But if you have multiple buckets that all kind of work in the same ecosystem, client engagement and, client retention is very hard to do. So it's better to have lots of services that you can have a 5-star experience from than just trying to be perfect at one. And then you're losing a lot of business because, they're going to most people that buy a home have a mortgage. Everyone that buys a home has title. So you've kind of find these collaborations. But what I will find I say is that I was not an expert in real estate. I found someone who was, my wife. And so when I sold my business, like a lot of PE firms, they knew so much better than myself, who'd been running that business for 20 years, or 90-year company, multiple generations. The PE firm knew so much better that they wanted to let go my entire back end staff. So the back office staff, the bookkeepers, HR, IT, all those things that, they were like, nope, we have all that. It's all ancillary. You don't need it. And I said, not a problem. So I brought them all over and started the real estate company specifically for those employees. Said, look, bookkeeping is bookkeeping, sales is sales. We're going to retrain everything else. So out of about 350 employees that we had, I brought about 20 over that the PE firm did not want. We restarted the company as View and trained, grew, and within 18 months of inception, we went from I think there's about 1,300 brokerages in our area. We were top 50 that quickly. And so really showcased that, working hard and focusing in really doesn't matter what industry you're in. And that kind of gave me the power to go like, look, If these skills translate, showing up, working hard, doing the investigation, then Web3, which is something that has escaped everyone. There is no winner. There is no clear, Ethereum is not winning. No one's winning at this point. That gives the ability for me to say, I do feel I can step in right now. I do feel like I can come in over and make a change, even if I haven't been in the space for 15 years.
That's amazing. So how did it come up with you mentioned partly yWhales, why you created, but let's, for people that don't know about that, how it works, how did it started, what are your goal and present and future?
Yeah, so yWhales is really started around, how do you educate the top of the funnel? How do you educate the C-suite? Because there's a lot of theses. We see the technology, but there's been a lot of really bad implementations. And I know people that took advice of marketing firms or a variety of people, and it just went nowhere. Failed implementations, which happened in any new technology. And I said, this is a game changer. This is a real delta that we all need to pay attention to, because the world is going to change. And those that first grasp and grab a hold of email and FTP servers and digitizing their workflows, they had the best kind of catapult launching into that next phase of Web 1. And I'm seeing the exact same thing happen here, where it's like, you may not think that you need blockchain. It's going to be irrelevant. It's going to exist whether you understand it or not. Most people, when you go to a web page, you don't sit there and say, oh, is this Amazon S3 or is this Azure? Like, I only use Azure websites. It doesn't matter. Is it worked? Is it secure? Is it loading? And that's what the company that is utilizing the technology is there to do. They make those decisions, and you're the end user. We're going to see the exact same kind of roadmap happening in Web3. So we started really focusing on education. Let's talk. So we started with kind of really that education collaboration concept. Deep dive is once a week. It's 90 minutes. We would bring on a founder, an entrepreneur, or an expert in their field, and for about 60 minutes, they would give a presentation to no recordings, no guests. Everyone would be known. They'd give a presentation exactly from a 101 to a PhD level on what they did, and then about 30 minutes of Q&A, of which we could all have a better understanding of this. And I'll say deep dive was one of the hardest things to do, is because most people would come in there and their eyes would glaze over. I wouldn't understand half of the things people were saying, but we're in the background, we're Googling, we're asking, we're collaborating, and we all kind of learn together, this infrastructure layer. And again, everything from level 1 CEOs, lawmakers, lawyers, you name it, across the board. Then we kind of started branching out a little bit from there. So we had Fireside once a week, which is kind of this weekend in Web3. We did the podcast, and then we kind of started moving into like, we need to be more involved. So we started 2 different programs, one called Labs and another one called yWhales Solutions. What we found is that we had a lot of members that were very excited by the technology, and they wanted to go build. They want to go build something, and they have an idea, and they're going to go make it happen. And this is the greatest idea ever. And the worst, the worst people you can get to validate an idea are developers. Not that developers aren't great and they can't build it, but they're not going to validate your idea. Is there a product market fit? Is there an ROI to this? Is there actually a captive market? And I watched, numerous people spend, millions of dollars on designing and building technology. The worst one I saw was somebody spent about $1.5 million building an NFT minting platform. And at the end of the day, they sold 6 NFTs, not 6 per day, but 6 total. That was it. And that's about as bad of an ROI as you can get. And there was nothing to sell. At the end of the day, there was nothing there. They hadn't created anything novel. So we started yWhales Solutions to really help validate and go through those concepts. We worked with a number of our members all the way up to Fortune 500 companies today. Labs was really kind of like, okay, we want to build things as a group. We want to sit there, and so we would create teams. We'd sign advisors and say, okay, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on this. We've launched NFTs. We've launched NFT platforms. We've kind of played around with the technology quite a bit, but from an internal perspective, because most of the things that happen on Web3 are not legal, and we, as the largest known entity of high net worth individuals related to Web3, like, we're just not interested in getting in trouble while we play around. So that was a really good opportunity for Labs. From there, we launched Ventures, our venture capital arm. So it's a master Cayman feeder. very easy for US or global people to start making investments into early concepts or seed stage companies. And then out of labs over time, we launched two other companies. One of those is called LaunchXR. LaunchXR is our response to the metaverse being boring and stupid. So basically what we have is LaunchXR is an immersive commerce company that we use AI to take your existing website that sits out there. We extrapolate and scrape everything from it. We create an immersive space, integrate AI, reintegrate commerce. It integrates with Shopify and Stripe and everything that everyone already uses, and then replicates back their old, desktop and mobile website. So that product is already in alpha. We've got a number of people that are getting ready to deploy in about Q2 pilots. So really, and again, that you start talking about the teams of how do you build this and where do you go. Everyone that works on that, and I've kind of stepped back from a while ago, they've built this, these types of technologies, time and time again. So what is really cool is that when we kind of all agree, hey, this is a need for North America, for Europe, for Asia, for LATAM, and this is the way that we already have 1,000 companies signing up and saying, if you build this, yes, I will do this. That's the due diligence. That's what we needed, and so LaunchXR has already kind of stacked the deck that we know what we're going to build. We've got a few big pilots, and we're going from there. And then the last one that came out of labs, which is where I spend most of my time, is a company called FinRamp. And FinRamp is all about legal tokenization of real world assets. So right now, we've seen really the only real world asset tokenization successes have been stablecoins. But I also want to say that those have probably been the most highly successful tokens that are out there. People understand what they are. Not every stable coin is created equal. But basically, Circle is looking at going IPO. We've seen Paxos and a couple others be able to do, some real world assets. But it's a big, heavy lift. It's a very expensive lift. And so we said, well, how do we make this scale? There's an estimated $1.3 quadrillion worth of assets that are floating around this planet. If you just take real estate, which is something I know intimately, there's $330 trillion. So we don't have to take a token from scratch and say, we're going to create a multi-billion-dollar company. We can start with multi-trillion-dollar companies, and then start migrating their assets into a very, very secure and regulated blockchain ecosystems.
It's first of all, congratulations. That's an amazing pipeline, and the achievements, and people can see we put all the links to the websites. So Jay, you touch a lot of high-profile projects. So you've been in all these waves of the blockchain, and now we're going through another one, especially on the crypto prices. But like you said, the technology is here and is going to stay. So for people listening to us, of course, I think I would divide my audience by the ones that are really into completely crypto and blockchain, and the ones that are probably more skeptic or at least more reserved. So from your experience going to, like you said, multi-billion-dollar companies and very strong companies and building solutions that work, what would be the kind of some case studies? You touched a couple of case studies, failures, especially on the case of the NFTs, and there's a lot of failures, and I think everyone has a bit of a failure if you did something on this area. But tell us a bit some case studies that you probably are more proud that yWhales has been managed, and things that people can see, and of course they can actually learn with this as well.
Yeah, I think some of the ones, keep in mind that I'll do my best to dance around a whole bunch of NDAs. That kind of runs my world, and I do want to be respectful. So I'll kind of state it like this. I know there's a lot of people that will be upset by this statement, but crypto and blockchain have been in its beanie baby moment for quite a while. The fact that we can create concepts like digital scarcity, and commerce and trade around JPEGs and communities, I think is fabulous, and I think that it's a right. And if people, that's where they want to invest their money, that's great. But we've seen that in times of crises, these are highly liquid items, and they're the first to get drained, down to zero. So one of the biggest successes we've seen is, and where we spend a lot of time, is the marriage between legal contracts and smart contracts. And I think that is a very big, opportunity for lots of people when you're talking about things like trade finance, when you're talking about mortgage-backed securities and TARPs and a variety of other, and financial vehicles that we all kind of know and love. And it becomes one of those things that I think it was just recently, Elon said it. It's been a saying of mine for a long time. The most precious asset in the entire world is time. That's it. At the end of the day, Elon, he blows up rockets because he says it takes longer of a development cycle to make it perfect versus just shoot it, blow it up, and then keep going again and again and again. And so when we start talking about time being that valuable asset, how can you speed up transactions? How can you lower errors? How can you do these things? And that's where blockchain's perfect. That's where blockchain has that transparency that you can have multiple people working on the same project. So for one of our clients right now in the United States, and I'll use one that's very familiar to me, the mortgage uh, starting a mortgage process on a real residential home in the United States is an average of 28 days from the time you start the loan application to the time you close. That's really about the fastest that it can move if you go through the entire process. And we were able to basically rescope that, again, keeping in mind that we have to be able to work with the title companies, the mortgage companies, the banks, the lenders, all the regulatory bodies there. We're able to tie in, integrate smart contracts and get that down to 3 days. And that's a big game changer, because now you've taken an asset that is liquid, residential, commercial real estate, but it takes about 30 days. Even if someone says, I want to buy this today, it's about that 28-day process. And we were able to take that exact same workflow down to 3. And I think that's what you're really going to start to see over the next, 5 years is the power of tokenization in combination with regulation. And I think that that's one of the things I always say is regulations shouldn't be scary. It's about consumer protection. It sounds not fun because it starts with paying your taxes. But for people that already have operational businesses that are spending, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars on compliance, these are game changers to provide speed, liquidity, and security.
Fantastic, and I completely agree. I think we cannot quick wins always get to long roads, and to say less. So one of the things you guys have been doing, and you touch a couple of elements on the metaverse and Web3. So, for people listening, you can go to the website yWhales, and we'll put some links, and even during the interview, probably some images. So tell us a bit the work you've been doing with Web3, and of course, Web3 right now has kind of multiple layers, because in the end of the day, we can talk about Web3, Web 3.0, and we can go as well through all the areas of metaverse enterprise, gaming, and different areas. But how do you nail this for people? Because normally, I think one of the things that happens with me, and probably with you, is that when we start talking about these terms, people just get confused, especially business leaders. But what they want, they know that, and you have actually in one of your websites that the immersive experiences definitely improve business. I think everyone knows that. And as well as 3.5 billion people are playing games every day. So that in one way, they are effectively in a Web3, some kind of platform. So give us a bit of insights how you deal with Web3, especially with business leaders that normally are much more reserved and some of them more conservative to make decisions.
I think there's been a lot of explanations. And one of my favorites is the easiest, but I think it's a little too simplistic, is Web 1 was read, Web 2 was read write, and Web 3 is read write own. And I think that's a really simplistic way, but I think it's almost too simplistic. To me, the way to define Web 3 is, in the next 5 years, when you connect your computer or your device to the internet, what will it do? What does it have access to? And so, number one, we know it's going to have access to blockchain and blockchain technologies and cryptocurrencies. We know that you're going to have access to AI and artificial intelligence, whether that's through a variety of means. And we also know that you're going to have access to immersive type experiences that are going to be changing the way, whether that's through a hardware device or in a lot of other cases it's some sort of implant. But one of the things is what is being delivered through the internet, and that's the way I kind of think of Web3. And so the next iteration of this is going to be not just the blockchain cryptocurrency arm, it's going to be the AI integration. And AI by itself isn't like chatbots, great. How can I make it just do things related to my daily work? And then lastly, what's it going to look like? How am I going to interact with this? And we've seen kind of those iterations of Apple Vision Pro and a variety of others. I think games, again, same thing. I haven't, my kids are big gamers. It comes through the internet. They don't play games if it's not attached to the internet. So I think the internet is quite simply whatever the experience is delivering. And we're seeing it grow quite wide and responsive. 15 years ago, it was a wasteland. There was not much there. You couldn't even find what Tiger Woods, what his latest scorecard was while he was on the while he was playing, on the PGA. And today, you could follow him live, streamed from hundreds of different phones if you wanted to. So I think it's just really seeing that iteration move forward.
So when it comes to, so you mentioned a couple of case studies around experience that you did, especially in the conversion between Web3 and e-commerce and different parts. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that and just share? Because at the moment, of course, we have, of course, especially 2000, you mentioned AI as well. 2023 was definitely the year of AI. 2022 was metaverse, but it partly failed, and Meta took over the stage, but as well didn't go probably in some ways they wanted. But what I would like to do is, so from the perspective of everything you're doing right now in this conversions between, because in the end of the day, this technology is not just one technology, the convergence is between multiple technologies. So in your work with the yWhales, like a pipeline, for instance, I'm an executive, I want to go to yWhales, why I should go to yWhales, and what be one experience that I can actually help my business with. I think that's probably the question people ask, being very practical.
Yeah, so we're a relatively close community. So there's one of those things is that you'll start seeing these kind of appear out. We're not very public. We are public from the podcast perspective, but from the membership level, and how we interact, we're relatively reclusive. I would say that when we think about the next iterations of Web3 and where everything's going, I think the best way to describe Web3 is the modular internet. That we're going to be able to say that each of these, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, tokenization, smart contracts, immersive, e-commerce, AI, generative AI, like those are all, pieces of a puzzle that we're going to be able to intermix with. And so the concept, one of the things I play around with quite a bit, the software is so much easier to deploy. We're not going to need like one of my random theories is I don't think you're going to see like large email services like Gmail anymore. I think you're going to see very modular abilities that you launch your company. Everything is built into a variety of SaaS products, but you don't have to have like I'm creating an email server now. I'm going to go bounce back and forth. I believe you'll bring all those tools into a centralized portion that you have control of, you own, because that's at the end of the day what everybody wants is that ownership of their own data, the control of their own experience. And we don't need storage is cheap. Internet connectivity is now satellite based if you need it. And so I think that what we're going to see quite a bit is that everyone's kind of redesigning their web infrastructure. Whether that's their ERPs, CRMs, their go-to-market websites, or their e-commerce. And so where people really come to yWhales, or they come to solutions, is they want to start that process today because it takes years. Any functioning business isn't going to make that change overnight. They're going to want to evaluate. They're going to do the due diligence, and so our contracts, generally a lot, go years, because we want to kind of crawl, walk, and then run to make sure everyone understands it. So Launch XR is exactly that. It's an ability for everyone to play with it, get an understanding of it. I refer to it, and the team will get very upset with it. It's the earliest version of kind of MySpace for immersive. Any business can launch it. Any person can make a space of it, make it their own, and deploy that very quickly. You don't have to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on Decentraland to kind of have this thing that you may or may not ever need. So it allows for easy ramping up just as quickly as a Squarespace site. I can make it, I can use it, I can keep it, or I can dump it if I don't like it.
Practical, I love it. And it's actually, I think we need more that practical approach towards this, because at the moment there's a lot of discussion in the space of AI, space of Web3, especially even blockchain is going back and forth. But like you said, we just need to move forward. So you build a very powerful community, and this is, like you mentioned, a premium community. And I think if you see the website, it speaks for itself, and as well you understand. But you have as well the yVentures.vc that is part of the community. So tell us a bit about the product, especially for people listening to us, and we'll put the links and the images. So in the yWhales, there's the project of FinRamp that I mentioned in the bio. There's Launch XR and the yVentures. If you want to just talk about a bit more deep into the three projects and how they work.
Yeah, so yVenture, we'll start with yVentures. It's really designed around traditional investments. So it's not a coin fund. We're not here to go deal with yield. We're here to make investments in the companies that will make coins, that will make, these technologies that actually do have inroads in there. So we use, very old-fashioned techniques, such as due diligence, collaboration. We only invest in known teams, known entities. So we understand a lot of wealth has been generated from anonymous teams, but as kind of the largest group of high net worth individuals on, around the planet, we have to have a legal foundation for everything we do. So we really start with that as our foundation. And it's a great team, Jessica Billingsley and Max Cohen, that run that. They've both been doing this again for a decade plus. So well within their wheelhouse to kind of help find the deals, facilitate, capital and deployment and a variety of other things there. LaunchXR, we've talked about, it's got to have commerce. It's got to have an ROI. So the way we look at it is just making an immersive space is great. You have to be able to sell, you have to be able to promote, you have to be able to do something. And there has to be a reason to go back there. And I think that's the biggest thing is there's a lot of times, and we've all done it. I've been to, in every journey space, every this is, 100 metaverses. I've done them all. My favorite story is I gave my he was, I think 15 at the time, a couple of years ago, my son, I said, hey, here's 2 ETH. I want you to go into Decentraland and I want you to figure this thing out. And, a couple hours later, he came up and goes, there's nothing I want to buy. I don't get it. I said, no, like this is the hottest thing on the planet. Everyone's saying so. I need you to go understand it. And he came back a few hours later. He goes, please don't make me do this. Like there's nothing here. It's not fun. None of my friends are interested in it. So we really started LaunchXR with like, it's got to be interesting. So we just had a group of high school seniors and we showed them an early alpha of LaunchXR, and they were like 1,000 ideas. They immediately wanted one. They want their own. They want to deploy it. They want to be able to bring their friends in. They want to be able to showcase it. And that's what you want. You want people that are excited about it. But more importantly, does they have the ability to deploy it, within minutes on their own devices or laptops. You don't have to go buy a special screen or a headset. And so that was really important to us. So the team behind there, Brady and Abe, have just done a fabulous job. We work with programming.com. And so that one should be deployed here soon. But I think it's always around rapid development, iterate and fail, iterate and grow, and make sure that you're modular, able to kind of bring in best of practices. Like we really don't invent anything new. Like there's not a single technologist here that's writing code. We quite simply look and say, how can we use all these various technologies in a way that's interesting to the existing markets and to, CEOs and CTOs around the world. And then FinRamp, like I said, is the same thing. It's modular. It's designed around, essentially to be infrastructure layers. How do you make sure? And I think the earliest thing is, how do you make sure FTX never happens again? Because a lot of the things that were happening behind the scenes at FTX were from extremely smart people that were absolutely doing their best to do the right thing. They were going through their audits. They were going through their code compliance. There's a lot of people that will agree or disagree with me, but we had intimate knowledge of what happened behind the scenes there, as well as Luna and a variety of others. And we said, look, it's not that they had the wrong ideas, but they had the wrong implementation, and they clearly had some bad ethics. And so what happens if you kind of go out and say there was enough interest that people wanted to do this? What happens if you bring in a group of professionals that's already done that? So my co-founder and partner in FinRamp, Zamfira, she's the former chief of strategy for Scotiabank, $1.3 trillion in assets. She understands the business. She understands how everything works inside that bank and others. Prior to that, she was with McKinsey. Our chief of legal, Marcel, he helped write my car in the EU. So that goes back to us always saying we want to find the professionals that have already done this. They already understand this. And we do a very different thing, which is we don't code until we already have that foundation. And we've already signed up X number of people that are willing to do business on this platform. So we've already gone and signed up, approximately 15 plus companies, brokers, and everything else to use the early iteration of FinRamp. FinRamp will be launched, and our alpha product will be carbon credits. So we've seen a lot of people try it. We have a very novel approach to it. We're working with the large registries. We're working with the large brokers. And that's one of the things is that we believe that we don't have to create an entire new ecosystem. We can take what's there, integrate the best practices, and then be able to scale and grow, because that's the one thing blockchain does best, is it scales much faster than any other technology possibly could.
Fantastic, and congratulations. And I think this is the approach that I think for people listening to us, we need. So let's go a bit deeper on these topics, because a lot of people listen to us. So for instance, you mentioned carbon credits, you mentioned a lot of things in terms of immersive experiences in commerce and things like that. And my experience is definitely that most of the people are still very far from understanding these things. So let's start by carbon credits in particular, and you mentioned that you're building a community on that. So most of the business, unless you are a very big business, you don't even know what is a carbon credit. Well, let's start by the basics. If you wouldn't mind, just for dummies, like say carbon credits for dummies, a bit of explanation, and how we bring in these to platforms and to businesses.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So first off, you can split carbon credits into two sectors. There's the regulated carbon credits, which is the governments. They make the rules. They say what is a carbon credit, what's not a carbon credit. Sometimes they're being, carbon credits are generated for nothing happening. Tesla generates about $30 million of government regulated carbon credits a year just because they're producing vehicles. They still make money on their vehicles, but because it's a green energy, they earn these carbon credits. On the voluntary side, is very different. It's generally it's outside of any government regulation. In fact, they're unregulated from a variety of standpoints. And so by doing that, you basically have to rely on third-party verification sources and other brokers as well. So you're relying on the two biggest ones are Vera and Gold, and they'll say, look, we've audited this, they've planted 1,000 acres of trees. These trees are going to grow at this density. Here's the science behind it. And so every day that this exists, there's a 1 ton carbon offset that will be produced, and that can be sold into the market, and then people can choose to sell those, trade those, and retire those. But we've seen this market kind of be stagnant. So it's only about a $2 billion market cap. And you may say, oh, $2 billion carbon credits. That's great. Like Doge is bigger. Like for, it's so small and it has adoption issues. It has trust issues because it's hard to verify. And I think that one of the things that blockchain does very well is, you can trust, but you have the ability to verify. And so we're bringing in a lot of new technologies into FinRamp to showcase that if we can provide trust, growth, and security into the voluntary carbon credit market, which, listen, there's a couple thousand people in Davos right now debating this right now. If we can provide the underlying infrastructure that allows all those parties to work together and to grow that at least by 5 to 10x over the next few years, then that provides FinRamp the ability to say, okay, we did this with voluntary carbon credits. Now let's get into trade finance. Let's get into equity. Let's get into bonds. Let's get into the other things that we really want to do. But it provides that kind of crawl, walk, run approach as we move in there. So carbon credits are very interesting. It's a household name. Everyone has heard of it, but like you said, they may not understand what's happening in the background. But at the end of the day, it should be people and companies and institutions and governments that want to invest in things that are good for the planet. And I will say right now that's a thought, but that's not what's happening in practice. We'd like to be able to kind of help bridge that gap. And someone that is buying, purchasing, and saving rainforests, those carbon credits we think should have a higher valuation than those that are quite simply just passively being allowed to generate carbon credits because it's just part of their business. Like they didn't pollute as much, but hey, here you can get some extra carbon credits. So it's a very complex market is what I can say.
No. I love the way you synthesize. I always like to have experts who synthesize because one of the things I realize, even people, and I appreciate the way you did it, very sharp to the point. Kudos to that, and great for our audience. Please listen to this and study this. So let's look at one exercise because I would like to do an exercise as an industry expert. So you mentioned when you talk about blockchain, we speak, and of course in this channel I had some of the biggest people in blockchain in the world, but let's go a bit more deep in terms of a case study. For instance, you mentioned a carbon credit. If it's okay for you, and you're a great educator as well, how can we, if you can summarize very top level, how blockchain will allow you to have a carbon credit that you're not going to be screwed up? Because a big challenge for people that have experience in carbon credits is, where am I going to buy it? How am I going to do it? And there's a lot of case studies of people that got, if you search, for instance, carbon credits Brazil, probably, even me, which is funny, I'm start working with different things and I see, oh my God, this is a kind of a completely a crazy world, which is the same with the NFTs, which is the same with a lot of things in crypto. But like you said, there's regulators and non-regulators. Sometimes people put everything in the same box, and it creates a lot of skepticism and and worse than that, I think the challenge is it creates a lot of I would say the sense of disbelief, and the sense of disbelief is the worst, because when you have a sense of disbelief, people can actually get in trouble or create a lot of issues. And then of course everything is FTX, like what happened with FTX, and then there's kind of a transgression, and people don't want to invest or they become panic. So the question is, how can we use are using blockchain and Web3 to make an experience of buying carbon credit seamless and great for business?
Yeah, so I think the technology is part of the issue. So, number one, we do have some novel approaches to our use of the technology. But I think the biggest one is we start with regulation. So we start, off with a legal foundation, which is the way we do everything. And so basically these tokens or these carbon credits or anything that we do, we want them to be regulated. Even if they don't require regulation, we will force regulation onto them, because at the end of the day, because this is global, because we're going across so many jurisdictions, we have to be able to hold people accountable. And that doesn't just mean myself. That means that anyone that is basically stating, I've created this project, I am selling this project. There's a lot of reasons why I know that people want to shun the word of security. Security is not scary. It has to be properly managed. They're relatively expensive to deal with, but I think we can bring down those costs quite a bit with blockchain based technologies. So we start with establishing trust, meaning that if someone sells you something and they blatantly lied about it, then there should be repercussions. We don't have to create those repercussions; they already exist. So by adhering to, in our case, we're launching under the EU, under the My Car regulations, we're able to kind of establish, like, here are the repercussions that when we go and source out carbon credit project managers and certifiers, we basically start off with, like, these are the repercussions if you provide false data. And we're the least of your worries, because you're legally liable. So I think that's one of the biggest differentiators to us is that you actually are stating, like, hey, not only can I see everything that's here, I'm not just seeing, hey, carbon credit was created on this date, this time, and go check another website. We actually load. We have a novel approach to how we do our tokenization, where we can have built in, gigabytes of data. So anything that's needed, the entire repository, PDFs, videos, pictures, certifications, documents, logs, everything lives inside the token. Think of it as kind of a mini DNS server. We're a massive repository that is fungible. Some items are fungible, some are immutable. Just depends on what the data is. But there's a template that all carbon credits follow. That allows for AI to have access and be able to sort and understand it, and allows for the market to kind of decide what they believe has more value than not. So a lot of really interesting things that I can kind of go through. But at the end of the day, I believe the regulation, proper regulation combined with the technology solves these things. Because generally when you involve regulation, that means things get slowed so far down that it becomes almost impossible to do business. And vice versa. If you shun regulation, you end up with hacks and rug pulls and everything else. We believe there's a blend of those two, and that's where FinRamp sits.
Fantastic, and it's very clear how to get into that. So now that we are, I know that we're passing almost 1 hour, so two or three more questions. So from the way you've been building the yWhales worldwide, so you mentioned, first of all, there's a very, like you mentioned, a very attention to bring individuals and leaders that become part of the community, and you have very control on that, which I completely understand. Tell us a bit about that process for people that might be interested or want to know more how it works.
Yeah. So number one, anytime that we're building a project, whether that's LaunchXR, FinRamp, Ventures, anything else, like, our education is all on podcasts. So if anyone wants to know why we think the way we are, you have a conversation with me, I'll generally be like, hey, here's who taught me that, and here's the public podcast. So we've recorded, I've personally done about 260 hour long podcasts, very much in this form like yourself. But I'm very selfish about them. You're on there because there's things I want to know. There's things that you're an expert on that I need for my projects that my community has asked questions on, and we now have you to answer. So generally what we do with those is not only do we have them do a deep dive or fireside, which are private, but we also have them do the podcast, which is public. So even if you're not a C-suite executive or whatever the case is, we absolutely encourage you to take a look at those. They are probably some of the smartest people on the planet that have never been given a second of time or press or appreciation for what they're able to do. That being said, you can still apply. I mean, we still do have people apply to yWhales communities all the time. We have a committee that looks through them and evaluates them. And if you do have inherent knowledge and value to the community, then we absolutely will take a look at it. Our goal is not to be big and with everyone. Our goal is to quite simply be a small, tight knit community focused on the next iteration of the web from that kind of global compliance standards.
That's a very clear and sharp one. So one of the last questions. So so you've been based in one specific area of the US, St. Louis in particular, but you are into the world. So tell us a bit about this local versus US versus or local, national, global. I think it's very important for, and as well online, offline, because I think these things we cannot underestimate this.
Yeah, so I spent last year, I think was a good way to kind of talk through. I spent 110 days on the road. Very little time in the United States, majority of the time spent outside of the United States because FinRamp is an EU-based company and I'm clearly an American citizen. What was really interesting, and I had, I traveled to South Africa. I was in Dubai, was with you in London, Zurich, Germany, just, and I spoke, but most importantly, like Zoom is my window to the world. So, I spent last year, approximately 3,500 hours on Zoom. So that's actually about 20 weeks solid. Like that's it. So half of my year was on Zoom, and I can meet with anyone around the world. And the only issue we ever run into is time zones. So outside of that restriction, of which is why we don't do a bunch in Asia right now. But that's kind of our move and facilitation from there. I would say the most enthralling kind of learning that I had is how rare free speech is around the world, and what different perceptions of free speech are, and what a free and when you can go off of that concept of what free speech is, that very much then starts to define what they believe that free commerce is. And at the end of the day, we're at blockchain going, it's all should be free, it should be open, it should be this. But I will tell you, there's a parity on what someone believes they should be allowed to say versus what they should be allowed to do with their money. And it was very interesting to hear the different perspectives from people that have lived their entire lives in South Africa, to people that have lived in Dubai for a few years, to one, people in London, I was shocked by the internet in the UK. I was literally just like, I don't know how you can do anything on this. My normal daily workflow had to be done through a VPN because it just wasn't allowed through the UK. And I don't even think I'm doing anything crazy other than just reading a variety of news sources. And so I think that was kind of the biggest lesson in learning I have is really, now that we're moving to this global economy, which is what we are, we still have to have that common language. What do we feel is appropriate? What do we feel is safe? And I think that's where, again, there's no perfect answer. But I can tell you that what everyone did want is they all do want free speech. They all do want free commerce, even if their perception of what that is very different around the world.
Amazing. So last thing, and I wanted to touch as well. Of course, there's much more questions, but I think you've been fantastic, and I want to be respectful. So, your podcast is I think like me here, it's a great tool, and you're doing fantastic work with the podcast. So, tell us a bit about podcast and how it works, and the people you've been doing. You have 438 videos, and I know that you've been profiling a lot of the people and a lot of the community.
Yeah, we generally for people that aren't in YPO or EO, but there are professionals that want to come in. We refer to those as Y pros, and so we generally like either they're interested enough to host a podcast with, or they can be a fan, and so the podcast has just been an amazing education and kind of documenting all of our journey, because it wasn't just me as the only host. We had a variety of other co-hosts on. I've been interviewed in a variety of ways on there. So to me, I just feel like podcasting, while it's a very old term, really is the dissemination and categorization of a lot of information. You want to learn anything, it's all out there. And I think the AI revolution is going to sort a lot of this out, because I've said a lot of things over the last few years on that podcast, and a lot of people have said a lot of things. But once it becomes searchable, to where, again, you ask your AI engine, whatever that is, a question, and it pulls together like, hey, here's this 10-second clip of an expert, here's their background of who that person is, here's what they said, and here's more information related to what that is. I think this is all this new Web3 that we're going to see that's integrating audio, video, database, and research, all kind of into a single portal. I just don't think anyone's done it quite yet, but it's coming close.
No, no, and I agree completely. And as well, the education part, we all have to keep learning. So you touch AI, although it's not your core part, so I have to ask you. So the AI revolution is going on, and of course we have generative AI, we have the bridge between blockchain AI and Web3. How do you see these areas? One of the last questions.
AI has already changed the world. You can't put the cat back in the bag per se. Oh, I'm getting pinged by my next one. Andre, if you can let them know. And so I will say, AI is going to change the world. It already has. The dangers of it, I believe, are real. I've got a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I will say that they automatically will believe everything that AI says. I'm at least old enough to be skeptical of anything I read on the internet. They're not. And so I think that what you have is a real need to control, what your beliefs are, what your families and what your culture's beliefs are inside of AI, because the answers should not be from a centralized source. And so I think that the integration of blockchain being the best protection against AI is a real thing. That you're able to kind of say, this is my database, this is my repository of what I believe is the truth, is what's most critically important for everyone around the world. So as scary as Web3 is to some people, I think AI is going to take that reins here soon.
I appreciate. So I want to thank you for your time and for your fantastic, short to the point answers. Wish you success with yWhales and all the things you're doing, and congratulations for all the efforts. And
you're fabulous, sir. I very much appreciate the time. I wish you the best. And we'll hang out in London again here soon, but I'll wait for it to be a little warmer there. Okay.
Yes, best. Thank you.